12 noon, and we like to try to be real on time with these because I realize that a lot of folks are taking an hour out of their day or an hour out of their lunchtime to come and spend this time with us. This is our last lunchtime learning for 2012. We will be back though in 2013, and we will get the schedule up on the website and the postcards out to you like always. We've got some really good things coming up. We've got one on ID, which is instructional design for VILTS, virtual instructor-led training. We have another one on how to use storytelling for learning, and some other good programs coming up in 2013. So right now, let me do my introduction here so we can get on with the topic. No sound yet, Lisa. I would, if you're having issues with the sound, I would try to dial in. So many things can happen that can cause that, but you can always dial in. Put your cursor over the little phone icon and dial the number and use the code. So there we go. All right, so this is brought to you by the wonderful people at LaSalle and my program in Instructional Technology Management. We're happy that all of you could join us. I think it's going to be an interesting topic and an interesting discussion. When we actually get to the presentation, which will be about 5 minutes, I'm going to ask for volunteers here. We're going to use a technique called the fishbowl technique. It's an instructional technique. It works well with VILTS, virtual instructor-led training. It works great in a face-to-face environment. But I'm going to ask somewhere between 4 or 5 of you to volunteer. So think about whether you'd like to be one of those folks. All right, Instructional Technology Management, our Masters of Science program, is all about using technology as an interface to help people learn. What's a little unique about our approach is, compared to most educational technology programs, is that we don't do K-12. Ours is focused on adult learning, and it is focused on corporate, institutional, organizational learning. We absolutely believe that this is the future of learning. I think you can see it everywhere you look. There is not a week that goes by that someone doesn't send me 2 or 3 job descriptions. Bobby, do you know anybody for some version of instructional design or training management? And as one of our learners said, she just got a very nice raise at work, and she said, you know, Bobby, I went from being like towards the bottom of the totem pole in our training department to now I'm the go-to girl. So I think that's what, we're definitely seeing more and more in terms of the emergence of technology in higher education. Now 1 out of every 5 classes is done online. Here are some titles, some career paths that you can look forward to with a degree like this. Different areas. A great local organization is ASTD. Tomorrow night they'll be down at Hilton Garden Inn. Thursday, the e-learning special interest group, which I started with Noel Archambault about, 7 or 8 years ago now. Thursday, they'll be up at LaSalle's Metroplex office. If you're in the local area, it's a great way to meet people. If you aren't in the local area, if you're in Ohio or Milwaukee or wherever, I'm sure there's an ASTD chapter who needs you close by. So just some. All right, so we have 2 options here in the degree program. We've got a Master's of Science degree and we have a certificate. The certificate is 18 hours and it is half of the master's degree. Everything applies if you decide to go on and get the master's degree, which most people tend to do. But if you already have a master's degree, and something like 60% of our learners have master's and you just want a certificate, that's an option that's available to you. There's my contact information. It's also out on the LaSalle website, lasalle.edu/ITM. I will add also that there are 4 years of these lunchtime learning programs out there, most of which we managed to hit the record button. So there's a wealth of information out there in the archives that you are more than willing to share, that we are more than willing to share with you and your organizations. A wide range of businesses in the U.S. and more throughout the world. Canada and Australia were a little bit ahead of us in this, and Europe was a little bit behind us, but pretty much everybody's getting on board, including third world countries. It's very exciting to see what's happening in places like Nigeria, where they are making a real effort to bring education to people who never had that option before, using mobile devices, and it's really pretty awesome. So just about every major sector is being influenced by this kind of movement. Okay, companies hire under many different titles. You know, we always have a standard joke. What is an instructional designer? Because there certainly is a wide range of job descriptions out there under the title. But there's many different things. You know, I encourage you to read the description and talk to the people. A lot of times, it's such a new field. A lot of times, people will put a description out there for what they think they want, and they really don't have any idea. So, you know, here's some things to look for if you're interested in the field. It's a wide open field. It's a multidisciplinary field. And it's a field where you can really make your own path. Okay, what's driving this? Globalization, multicultural, multinational diversity. The world is growing smaller, as we all know. We talked a little bit about ASTD. We talked about the fact that this is cross. I just put the lock talk button on. If you have audio on, if you wouldn't mind turning it, except for the 4 people that are going to volunteer, turning it off, or at least turning it down until we get that far, that'd be great. The LaSalle staff is wonderful, and they're committed to help you. If you're interested in our program, contact myself, contact Lynette Clemens, who is my admin, our online program admin director, and she will help you get through the steps. We really try very hard to walk the walk. I mean, that's one of the main things we do. Is we try to walk the walk. We try to introduce you to the major families of technology, synchronous, asynchronous, all different varieties, and explore how those are used in learning. One of the biggest challenges we have is that people are out there implementing online programs, self-directed learning modules, virtual instructor-led training, who have never learned this way. So I'm a big believer in you learn through experience, experiential learning. Yeah, this is the flipped classroom webinar. We'll talk about the flipped classroom as a model in about 2 minutes. All right, so here's the curriculum. If you're interested, it's out there on the website. Give us a call. and we'll take it. Everybody who comes to these has seen this quote before. So on that note, I'll put up my contact information one more time, and we will get on with what we came to do, which is talk about alternative models for learning. Uh, so while I'm changing that slide, if you would be willing to be part of the fishbowl, I need 3 to 5 people here. Please type "I'm willing to be part of the fishbowl" in the chat room. Okay, great. Excellent. Okay, so we've got 2 people willing. We've got 3 people willing. Can we have like 1 or more people? Let's talk about how a fishbowl works. A fishbowl is very much like an interactive session where what I want you to do is I want you to ask questions. And everybody's sort of going to observe the questions that these people who are in the fishbowl ask. And then what we want to do is we want to ask questions. Larry, all you have to do is ask questions of me as we go along, and questions of each other. But really, all you have to do is ask me questions. And then and towards the end, we'll save 5 to 10 minutes, and you can ask myself and the people in the fishbowl any questions that you have about the material or the questions that they ask. So it's a way, if we were doing this in a face-to-face environment, we would put the people who volunteered to be in the fishbowl in the center of the room, and then everybody else would sort of be around them and observing. It works. When does it work? It works really well when you've got a fair-sized crowd, and you want to have interactions, but you don't want to get bogged down in too many questions. Why? Because really, as Edward Tufte puts it, the only person that you're really interested in hearing that answer is your question. You're not really interested in everything else. So let's get started here. We are here to talk about alternative models of learning. I will start, somebody mentioned a little bit earlier about the flipped classroom. The flipped classroom is a pretty simple model. First of all, it's nothing new. Secondly, it's a model that technology and multimedia has allowed us to facilitate, because now we can deliver movies via your home on YouTube and a host of other video sites out there, some of which we can secure, some of which are open sites. But we can bring content to you and not have to have you in the classroom. So the idea is that when you are interacting learner to content, you can do that on your own. Let us not take up valuable instructor time and classroom time with those kind of interactions. Very briefly, if you folks are not familiar with the 5 interactions, write these down, commit them to memory, because this is the foundation for how you build things with any of these kind of platforms. So it's learner-to-learner interaction. TED.com, yeah, TED.com is a great way that information can come to you. Learner-to-learner interactions, learner-to-instructor interactions, learner-to-the-content interactions, learner-to-the interface, and then finally vicarious interactions. So those are the 3 or 5 interactions that we're always dealing with. And what the flipped classroom says is put those learner to the content interactions outside of the classroom, and then let's bring that homework or that the let's make the classroom a live place where we stress learner to learner and learner to instructor, as well as learner to the content interaction. Does anybody have any questions on that for me? That is one model. That's one model that's become quite popular, particularly in K-12 in the last 2 years. Yeah, we will talk a little bit about Khan Academy a little bit later on. Um, that is definitely an open educational resource. The main model that we're going to talk about here is open educational resources. Yes, for the most part, MOOCs are open educational resources, and we're going to talk about them too. But the real question that a lot of schools and institutions and even organizations to an extent are asking is, what is all this open stuff? How do we get our hands on it? How do we use it? What makes it unique? And what should we be looking for here? Because it's such a different model than anything we've used in the last several hundred years anyway. So what makes open learning open? And what we're really looking here is open educational resources, which are known as OERs, and they are materials that are used to support education that may freely be accessed, reused, modified, and shared by anyone. Well, we can get into that too. How can you measure the effectiveness? I think the effectiveness of many of these really depends on how you use them. It's not a question of are they any good? It's how you use them in your situation. But one thing we know with open educational resources is that they're free. That's the caveat. I don't know. I mean, Andrea. I don't know that learner motivation would have a lot to do with effectiveness. What I would say to you is instructional design will have a whole lot to do with effectiveness. Certainly, learner motivation plays into it, but well-designed instruction can certainly do a whole lot to um, help with effectiveness. Yeah, plenty of interaction. Absolutely. So, how can you measure effectiveness? Well, as an instructional designer, what we would say to you right away is that depends on what you want to do with it. It's that ability to set those objectives and define those outcomes that then determines, how effective the instruction is at fulfilling those outcomes. So, what does all of this open educational resource stuff mean to you? That's really the question that we want to ask. And where is open learning? Well, open learning is starting to be everywhere. Um, Good open learning makes the market aware that it exists. When something is open, it can be disseminated quickly and widely to people everywhere. You may have created a great work, but if nobody knows it's out there, then it's really not going to be effective. OER includes full courses, course materials, modules, textbooks, research articles, videos, and any other materials that can support education. Exactly, Susan. It's all about access. Open educational resource creators own the intellectual property and copyrights of the open stuff that they create. However, they license uh, uh, the OER and make it freely available to others. And this is a shock. This is something that a lot of folks struggle with. How can I maintain my intellectual property and still make it free? I guess the other reality too is a lot of times initially, um, it's more expensive to put it out there free than it is to actually charge people for it. So one of the things that makes good open learning is that it's available and everybody knows it's out there. What we have here is the Open University at MIT. And the Open University at MIT sort of started the whole movement. Stanford got on board. Um, Going open enables rapid market entry, market penetration, and market share. Certainly, the work of Sebastian Thrun. We're going to talk about Udacity in a little bit. But the big thing here is it's just like iTunes. I mean, you could publish it, you could put it up there. Google also has some absolutely fabulous tools out there. I met a man who did a seminar. His entire high school, it's a Christian high school, his entire high school is online, and they used Google for all of it. So there are more and more things opening up. Google has an LMS now. iTunes U is out there. But the important thing with all of this is these are very different business models. They're very different business models than what we've used in training, and they're very different business models than what we've used in traditional education. Larry has a great question here. All free, all that stuff. Yes, that's one of the things is it has to be free. Any instructor or facilitator. Um, Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's no different than a, a Captivate or an articulate self-directed learning module where we put it out there, we don't assess it, and we say, you know what, we got to a Kirkpatrick level 1, we know they liked it. We're kind of looking at a Kirkpatrick level 2, maybe, but we're not going to go any further than that. I hear this all the time. So from that standpoint, you're absolutely right. I mean, just delivering content, you have no way of learning, knowing people learned. The big difference between instruction and information, in my mind, is intent. In instruction, we set objectives, we determine outcomes, and we have the intent that you're going to gain some level of learning, some level of understanding, maybe some level of application, and on and on. Information is information. And it's one of the big issues that I have with this current movement in corporate America on informal learning. Informal learning is fine to an extent, but those are very, very good questions. How do you know somebody is learning something with this? Well, there's only one way that we really know whether you've learned something. We have to assess it, and then we evaluate the training for its effectiveness. So not much different than core level 1 trained. True, Larry, very true. Test and outcomes assessment would measure if learning occurred. Yes, Lynn, and that's really the only way we have. If you don't assess it, we don't know. We can assume, but you know what they say about assuming. yes, some of these mocks can translate into actual credentials. Usually, the way it works, Andrea, is you must be registered for the course through the university, and then you take the mock or the MOOC, however we're saying it today. And if you complete the assessments and the requirements, you can get credit. You can get certificates for courses through Coursera. That's true. And it depends, again, on how the particular university is handling it. My friend Alec Koros up at University of Regina, the first time he did a MOOC, I think he had 19 students in it. So it depends on the university. But I think what's important here is, again, is the change in that model, the change in the business model. And the change in the business model is we're not going to worry about time and events, but we're going to assess you on some level of competency, and based on that level of competency, we're going to give you credit for it. All right, moving along here so we could stay on schedule. Open enables rapid market entry, market penetration, and market share. Again, open works don't end, they expand, evolve, and continue to grow. If you haven't checked out iTunes U, I highly recommend it. Here are some examples of how open learning works. So currently open learning resources, the big word in the last 12 months are MOOCs, multi-open online courses. Udacity is one venture, Coursera is another one, MITx is another one. Look for more and more of these. Canada has some great MOOCs. If you go to mooc.ca, you'll find a bunch of them. It's a combination. Most of these are designed around connectivism, socially networked learning. If you're into learning theory, connectivism is very much like constructivism and behaviorism and humanism, is a school of how we learn. It's a spin-off from Len Vygotsky and his theory of constructivist social learning, and both formal and informal varieties of this. So open universities are virtual collaboration, like-minded institutions committed to creating flexible pathways for open learning resources. And often formal academic credit. The open era, open universities aim to provide free learning to all students worldwide using open learning materials with pathways to gain credible qualifications from recognized educational institutions. So there's two things going on here that are pretty shocking and you need to sort of take a minute and look at. And that's this idea of free, that people are going to pay nothing really to take the course, and then they're going to pay some sort of reduced fee for assessment and then for credit. So it's a very different model than where, we put all of the emphasis on the are you good enough to get in here, and then count the Carnegie hours in terms of how long you've been sitting in a seat, and then assessments in terms of completion. This is saying, we're going to put the information out there, and if you want credit for this, then we're going to charge you a fee to assess you and then give you the credit. Western Governors University uses this model. And it is a university that is growing and growing and growing. We're going to talk a little bit more about them later, but this was founded by a group of Western governors a few years back. Started out kind of slowly, but the whole idea behind Western Governors was to give you credit for life situations, professional training you'd received, military training that you'd received, and make it a situation of compliance, credentialing, as opposed to compliance. So if you come in and you've been in the military, you've had tons of management training, and you can pass the management 101 course without taking the course, why should you sit there for a semester? The idea behind this too was to let people progress more quickly through school, and to get the price down. I think you can go to Western Governors. I believe they have 4 starts a year, and I believe it's around $3,000 a term. So, and you can take as many courses as you'd like. So you can get through a year there online for around $12,000. University of Georgia also has, great, Larry, that's true. West Georgia University also has some great things. And the Georgia, we're going to talk about them a little bit later too. The Georgia Board of Regents has done some great things with a standardized core for all the people who attend Georgia schools. So, all right, who is open learning? Probably the people who brought this to the forefront are the 2 gentlemen that are in front of you, Sebastian Third and Peter Norvig. Now, these guys were professors in computer science at Stanford. They started a multi open online course. He had over 100,000 people in this course, and very surprising what he learned. I mean, that was probably the best thing out there, is what he learned from teaching this course. First of all, the students that he had in Stanford, and Stanford, as we all know, is a pretty exclusive school to get in there, were not the people that did the best on the course. I think he said out of 100,000 people that took the course, something like 23,000 actually stuck with it and completed it. And I believe he had 19 or 20 people or something like that from Stanford. It wasn't a lot. You can certainly Google it. There's a ton of information out there. But I think what was so shocking to these 2 professors was how education has changed, and how what we've always done as education is not the future of education. I heard him speak down at Sloan, and one of the best things he said is we used to look at education as people went to school on a timeline. People went to school, then people went to work, then people retired and had fun. And in his opinion, that's all changed. That those lines now are on the continuum, are ongoing lines. That most of us will always be going to school for something or another. Most of us will spend a good part of our lives, if not all of our lives, working. And somehow we're going to have to figure out how to have fun along the way, because this idea that we're going to hit 65 or 70 or whatever it is and retire is probably not going to be realistic either. The other big aha moment that these guys had in teaching this open artificial intelligence course last year, where they had over 160,000 students from 190 countries, is one of the people who scored the highest on this was like a 7th grade girl from India. Never any formal training in artificial intelligence. So one of the big aha moments that they had was how much information from 160,000 people was being collected and out there in digital form that then could be analyzed. And hopefully some real big ahas will come out of that big data. This was such an impact that these guys left, Sebastian left Stanford and started a company called Udacity. Much like Coursera, just Google it, it's out there, and you can see the open courses that they have and that they're working on. Yes, Lynette, who's keeping an eye on me, I do have the archive started. Udacity, Udacity is spelled City, Udacity. If somebody could go grab the URL and paste it in the chat room, and don't get lost, that would be great. It's a little tough doing this without a helper, but okay. All right, so another big movement, another big player here is MIT. MIT started OpenCourseWare about 10 years ago. They put the stuff out there, and amazingly, it wasn't used. It was not the success that they hoped it would be. Opening up MIT courses and saying, "Hey, faculty and folks, here's the content. Take it and use it." And partly that was because there was no how do we deploy this. So MITx takes a little bit of different approach. It will make MIT open learning software available free of cost so that others, whether they're universities or other kind of institutions, such as K-12 systems, can leverage the same software for their online offerings. And here's a quote from Anand Argwala, who is the head of this. Creating an open learning infrastructure will enable other communities of developers to contribute to it, therefore by making it self-sustaining. So he's a professor of electrical engineering and computer science, director of MIT Artificial Intelligence Laboratory and Computer Science. An open infrastructure will facilitate research on learning technologies and also enable learning content to be easily portable to other educational platforms that will develop. In this way, infrastructure will improve continuously. So, we've got some big players in the game now. So, let's take a look at who all these folks are. How does a traditional university compete with the Hewitt Foundation, the Mellon Foundation, the Ford Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Foundation for UK's Open University, Carnegie Mellon? We've had Michael Brown, the project manager, is out there in the archives. Come and talk to us about Carnegie Mellon's Open Learning Initiative, Rice University, and more folks are getting involved in this open movement. So there are journals, there are textbooks, there are achievement credentials, and then the undergraduate, postgraduate credentialing that are all part of this open era movement. And don't worry, folks, I will put this PowerPoint, a PDF of this PowerPoint up with the notes section so that you can have all of this if you'd like to take a look at it. So, here are some other things and other ways that people are using this. This is an example of social media and open education that was run by my friend Alec at University of Regina. He did his doctorate on MOOCs, although they weren't MOOCs back then. And this was an open graduate level course that was on open, connected, and social learning. So the primary tool that he used to create this was Wikispaces. I have seen folks do it with Google Sites. I have seen folks do it with Blogger. So you don't need, the whole idea here is you don't need real special or sophisticated technology if you want to do this. Um, he used wiki spaces, and students worked on developing a personal blog and a digital portfolio, and on collaboration in the development of a resource of educational technology, and a major digital project. So David Wiley, who we all know from Utah State University, um, this was a standard graduate course, but it encouraged blogging and connection much the same way that MOOCs do. And you can really go back with this whole thing back to Ivan Illich. You can go back to the 1970s. Um, Brought to the published attention this idea of deschooling society. And what we've sort of seen develop over the last 40 years is a reinvention and a redefinition of what our schools do. And we know that our schools serve multiple functions, that it's not just the function of education. You know, to an extent, even up through 4-year undergraduate school, you know, it's a custodial kind of thing. It's a social community kind of role that they serve, and then we also educate people. But Illich talked about this schooling of society, and it was a critical discourse on education as practiced in modern economies. And the whole idea was self-directed education, and the idea that education had to be fluid and universal, and had to continue as life continued. So when we look at what's happening with technologies these days, technologies has just sort of forced the hand for these new models. I wouldn't say they're the cause of as much as the catalyst for. Interesting question. Thanks, Andrea. I appreciate that. How are these sites being funded? I think when you look at the schools, the Harvards, the Stanfords, those are being funded through the institutions. Udacity is a venture capital. It's a startup, so it's being funded by the individuals and venture capital. Some of these are real low budget things. Like Alex's thing, I mean, he basically did that with no money, and he didn't need any money. Um, the wiki sites was free, and I've seen many folks do this with, like I said, Blogger or Google sites, and it works out well. Everyone will tell you who tries to do a MOOC, for example, that it's a tremendous amount of work in the front end. That the design of the connectivism and how it works and so that it's not just mass confusion. It takes a tremendous amount of focus and design in the front end. But some of these are really, by the seat of your pants startups, where they are doing it themselves with the free tools that are out there and available. Khan Academy, which we're going to talk about in a minute here. Khan Academy was funded by Khan, I guess, but most people know the story behind this. This guy made a lot of money in finance and was very discouraged because I think it was one of his relatives, a nephew or something, was having so much trouble learning math. So he decided that he was going to create this site and put videos out there in math to help people learn math. Again, here's an example of a MOOC that's out there. Terry Anderson, Change in Formal Systems. This is a simple MOOC that is was available. No big deal, no big expense in producing this one. This looks to me like it might have been done in maybe WordPress or a content management system. And again, it's on change.mooc Canada if you're interested. Also note that a lot of these courses are rich with multimedia resources. So this connectivism takes the approach that you connect to the content, you connect to other learners, you connect to the instructor. Of course, you connect through the interface, and then you connect also with vicarious learning. So that they're all designed with multiple, or not all of them, most of the good ones are designed with multiple delivery methods to bring the information. All right, so here's a question, and my people in the fishbowl, I'd appreciate this. How are the expectations of free and online changing what we do in higher education? I would appreciate some feedback from you on this. If you could type it in the chat or raise your hand, and I'd be happy to pass you the mic. Yeah, I think that's true, Larry. I would agree with that. That's currently they're perceived mostly as marketing to attract other revenue-producing students. In my opinion, that's short-sighted. In my opinion, these are changing things more than we realize. These are setting up expectations that are very, very different that we need to look at. And two of the big things that are being like shaken to the core here is this idea of accreditation and Carnegie hours. This idea that in order to be effective, it needs to be a certain time, and we need to measure how long somebody sits in a seat. And, it's also shaking the model. The model of higher education was always one of a lecture-based model, pretty much, where you paid for someone's expertise. And now we've got an awful lot of information out there. We've got a lot of expertise out there. So I'm not sure that model of you're paying to have expert information delivered to you is still a viable one. Yeah, I think that's key. Yeah. Whoever had the mic, go ahead. Yeah,
this is Susan. I'm locked up. I can't seem to type. I keep leaving and coming back, but it won't let me type. But I wanted to respond to the question. And, I still think, and I think all this is great, and I love it, but I still think that having someone in the role of guide, facilitator, instructor, whatever you choose to call that person, I still think that there's value there to have someone that is helping you to create learning goals and kind of taking you along some path to achieve those goals.
Oh, I agree totally. I don't know if we left that out or we weren't real clear about that, but in many of these, I won't say all, but in many of these, the instructor is a very active participant in the course. This is not a just do-it-yourself kind of the content's out there, go explore. When these are done well, I agree with you totally. That's the in terms of interaction, that interaction with the instructor is very, very important in terms of a guide and helping you set those learning goals. Also setting the expectations for what the course is supposed to deliver for you. We know
that learners feel much more comfortable when those objectives are defined up front and they understand, what they're supposed to get. Experts are everywhere, but they are not necessarily good instructors. But that is true of college courses too. Absolutely. That is true of college courses, and that is true in the corporate world. A good engineer, a good scientist is very highly qualified in the content area, but a lot of times needs some help in knowing how to deliver that so that people can learn. Yes, I think that's important, Lisa, that the new model will allow learners to move in a more individual pace. Yes. In most cases, it is not a broadcast model, which most education was. And most education was set up around the 80-20 theory. You're going to lose 10% at the top. They'll get it no matter what. 10% at the bottom, they'll never get it. So you shoot the instruction out there for the masses, which is the 80%. And we know it's not effective. We've known that for quite a while. Students are consumers. I think we are looking at students as customers much more than we ever have in the past. And it is this question of choice. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to move on here just so we can get through this, and then we will open it up to everyone else. This is the Gates Foundation, Next Generation of Learning. And they gave away $1 million to a lot of different institutions last year. And some of them were 6 through 12, and some of them were post-secondary education. And the entire idea was give us a new idea. We want to make it more affordable, and we want something that's going to give out better results. If you look at the inner city graduation rates across this country, if you look at LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, they're deplorable. Depending on whose numbers you look at, you could come up with a few different percentage points here or there. But the bottom line is we've got an awful lot of people who are not graduating from high school. We've got an awful lot of people who are graduating from high school and are basically functionally illiterate. And we've got even fewer people that go on and get a 4-year degree in college. And this affects our workforce of the 21st century directly. All right, so where are we with all this? This is the classic technology adoption life cycle. Certainly we are past with a lot of these open educational resources. We are past the innovative stage. Some of them were with the early adopters. Certainly we're in, I feel that stage with MOOCs. You can say that with online learning, we have both in the corporate field and in higher education, we have certainly passed the early majority, and we are in what I would call the late majority, and maybe even moving towards the middle to the end of the bell curve there. And so each one of these stages from a market standpoint brings special challenges with technologies, special, sometimes as innovators, what they say is, 2.5% of the people are going to be innovators. So, in the innovation stage, you're going to have a lot of things flop. So you have to be willing to maybe not make it. In early adopters, more people are going to take on, and then notice there's that chasm where people fall by the wayside. And then, things go on with technologies, and then you've got early majorities, late majorities. And you could make an argument for, different technologies, different families of technologies, where we are with all of this. If you're interested in this chart, it's out there on Wikipedia, and you can certainly get it. All right, so let's look and see what Larry has. Corporations need to drive the types of education offered by choosing what fits their needs. Choice will drive the market. do these still apply to Generation Y? I think they apply to every generation. I think the idea that there's this huge difference in boomers and World War II generation, Generation X, Generation Y, I don't really see it. And I think we won't see it until we see a real shift in how education is done. For the most part, even with Generation Yers, we've used technology as sort of the icing on the cake. I don't think that it's been as integrated as we will see it in the future in both schools and corporate learning. I think certainly in the world of corporations, the great financial crisis of 2008 kicked us from the early adopter stage, maybe early majority stage, to well in the middle of the bell curve. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you, Andrea. I forgot the talk button. When I put the lock talk on, I got a lot of reverb. So, I mean, the question here is how is this going to play out? Are schools going to allow people to do this? Are they going to block professors from doing this? This is intellectual property, and corporations worry about this just as much. John says, my place really doesn't have the capacity to really do that yet. It's a chasm that really exists, especially for well-established industries, banking, finance, retail. If you are a startup tech company, everyone is either trained or motivated. And I may add, John, just briefly so we can finish up here, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. There's also a cultural issue there. A lot of these industries have a culture of secrecy, a culture of we don't up. It's not an open information culture. It's not an open source culture. I choose my graduate school based on the head of the program there. I wonder about the question on the screen too. Was that the screen? Let me just finish here, Andrea, and we can back up. So I think what we're looking at here, certainly you want to look at creativecommons.org. Creative Commons is all about open educational resources. These are just a few of what is out there and available currently in open educational resources for you to explore. So you want to ask yourself, where are we going with all this? What is going to happen? What's the new university going to look like? I guarantee you it's not going to look like what it's looked like for the last 200 years. I am amazed every day at the speed with which we are moving towards new models of learning. And thank you, folks, for all of you who joined me in the fishbowl. I am now going to open this up. I'm going to open up the audio and the chat for questions and discussion, and we will be around for a few more minutes. So we will keep the discussion going. Anybody have any questions? Anyone else in the corporate environment? John's asking, is anybody here in a corporate environment? If you are, type in the chat or give John a high five in the... Yeah, good, Larry. Good. That's what we try to be. We try to be helpful. We will have the archive out there, and I will have this PowerPoint PDF out there. Andrea consults for corporations. You know, one of the big things that I hear, and I get so concerned with this. I hear this big movement towards informal learning, which most of the time means we've got some sort of SharePoint thing going on out there, and we're going to collect information, create a learning environment, and we're going to put all of this stuff out there. And that's kind of where it ends. And I have a lot of concern about that in the corporate environment. Somebody else is in healthcare? Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Hey, Bobbe, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, I can hear. Just talk a little louder. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think your point about informal learning in the corporate environment is certainly a good one. Corporations have a bottom line to be responsible to, and it's very often the case that you hire folks to do a specific job or have a specific set of skills. So the problem with informal learning in the corporate environment is how are you going to make sure that you can validate that the people are getting those skills that either you're paying them for or that they can do what they're promising they can do through informal learning when they apply for their next job.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Larry. I don't know who was just speaking because I couldn't hear you. So if you've got a mic, turn it up and let's try it again, or type in the chat.